Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers. I saw that. I saw that in a headline. Somebody had something I read the other day. It said Biden is a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Throw it back at him. Oh, that's funny. That's absolutely funny. That's great.
I see the Ukraine flag back there before we get going.
You got the Ukraine flag, and I didn't order it off of Amazon because every source I checked was made in China. So I was referred to a company called Colonial Flag in Sandy, Utah. So I'm going to assume that even if the flag was made in China, at least I'm buying it from an American company.
There you go.
And I don't have to support Jeff Bezos and Amazon either at the same point in time. There's a trick though. This place actually, the flag was like $12, so it's a reasonable price flag. They pretty much sell tons of flags at around $12. I learned an interesting trick though with them is that I thought I didn't want to pay the shipping. The shipping was like almost as much as the flag. So I abandoned the shopping cart basically, and hours later, the next day, I get an email, use this code for free shipping. I'm like, okay.
Kaboom. There you go.
Right. So I decided a few days ago, I'm like, I'm going to order some other flags that I want here too, the Maryland flag and stuff like that. So I ordered that, and I basically did the same thing. I put them in the cart and then left them alone and got another free shipping offer.
This time, I don't want that to stop you, I guess.
No. I mean, it's like $48 worth of flags, and they want $25 for the shipping. And I'm like, yeah, they're flags. How much do they weigh?
That's right.
Now, here's the only thing now is that I had to tell the sales, had email back to the salespeople and said, the code's not working. They said, just put it in the comments and we'll take care of it. So I'm waiting to see. I got charged the full amount, because you can only do that online. I'm waiting to see if they give me my credit back for the remainder because they did send me an email saying, let us know and we'll take care of it. So,
okay. Well, good luck.
Yeah, good luck. See if I can get my $25 back. Maybe not. All right. Weather report. Going to be a little bit wet here in a while, but we're definitely seeing spring. We've got the cherry blossoms, which kind of makes me feel like I should be getting down there to DC and do cherry blossoms. But the South has had some really bad weather here. Texas got hit by some tornadoes, and New Orleans, got hit.
Right through the New Orleans proper, through the city. It doesn't look like there's only one person dead reported so far. But yeah, this is a time of year when you're really susceptible to that because there's warm air. Down there it's already they're having 80 degree days on the regular at this point. But when a cold front passes through, it can drop the temperature a lot. It can drop it 30, 40 degrees real quickly. So, and it's when you have those dramatic changes that you get big storms. And that's what happened yesterday down there.
Yeah, well, it'd be remarkable. If only one person died in that tornado, that would be remarkable, and that would be good news in that sense.
Did you see the video? The guy in Texas that he 0-metered a tornado went right over him, turned his truck around, and it turned it all the way around.
Oh my gosh!
He still headed where he was supposed to be going, and he just he filmed it, and then he kept on filming.
I did see a brief thing because I'll have some cable news or some news on the television so when I'm at the gym in the morning, and I did see there was something about I guess some station in like Texas I guess was doing a weather report, and they caught the tornado in the background off of I-35.
Yeah,
and they could point out it's like it's just I don't know. I'm sorry when I think about that kind of stuff. Every time I think about hurricanes and tornadoes, this is that swath of the country. I just can't imagine retiring to. Okay, I'm sorry.
When I was in high school, I'll never forget our science teacher telling us, "Boys, you live in Mississippi Valley, also known as Tornado Alley."
So, Mike,
this is true.
So, would you move back to Louisiana or down to those parts? I mean,
that wouldn't keep me out. I mean, it happens, and I've seen one go over my head. One time when I was in high school, I was right up the street from my house, and I was trying to impress some girl, and I was supposed to be home at, midnight or whatever it was at the time. And I wanted to keep talking to the girl, right? So I called my mom and I said, Mom, I'm in North Bossier and I'm on the way home. And so it'll be a little bit, but I'm on the way. And if I had been telling the truth, I would be dead because North Bossier was flattened by a tornado before I made it home. I mean, one of the most devastating things I've ever seen was that whole part of town. Like there was a drive-in movie theater, right? And we went and checked it out. And of course, it knocks over the screen. The screens always get knocked over, right?
Oh, yeah. But
like the little things that you pulled up and listened to, the little sticks out of the ground, I mean, that was like spaghetti. They were just all mangled, So you think about a storm that can uproot all those little things out of concrete, out of the ground, So you're talking about a storm tornadoes can be right at almost 300 miles an hour wind. So, you're dealing with a serious storm in a tornado.
So if Marty and MK watch us later on, they can say, Dad, you have now admitted to lying to your mother.
I told him this. This is why you don't lie. My mother's like, he's dead. Like, well, no, I was talking to a girl.
There's a lesson in there, right?
Yep.
And the other thing I was thinking about with this is, I think it's different. Man, for someone like me who's not used to those kind of weather events, the idea that I would actually move to an area that has a weather event like that, no, it's not going to happen. You have gone through and lived through it, and it's not as big a deal to you. I mean, it's still serious, but I mean, you understand how to deal with it and how to go through it, in a sense. But I mean, for me, it'd be like, oh, what am I doing? I almost think that's what happened to Jerry Cave. And, Jerry moved from here down to New Orleans, right? And he spent
got a couple of hurricanes, and he went and found something else.
Yeah, he hightailed it to Beaufort, South Carolina.
It's a little less there.
I just love, because I love Jerry, but the thing always cracked me up. He used to always, when we'd contact him, he'd say, "Oh, it's great down here. It's wonderful. You got to come down here," and he completely abandoned it.
Right. Well, yeah, it was that, and he kept getting ripped off. Right. He got stuff stolen from him a bunch of times.
Yeah,
New Orleans will do that to you too.
Yeah, I think he just learned that wasn't as ideal as he thought it was going to be. But I mean, part of the reason he moved down there was because his son, I think, was an FBI agent in the area. So I don't know if that's still the case or whether or not the son got transferred to another area that just said, okay, we can move somewhere else now as well and just get away from some of that. But I don't know what the weather like is in Beaufort, but he seems to love it there now. So anyway, all right, on to the news. So we're now about to enter week 5 of the invasion of Ukraine. Ukrainians have been amazingly resilient. I mean, their country is being destroyed before their eyes. Civilians are dying, soldiers are dying, but the Russians are taking heavy, heavy casualties, as far as we can tell along the way. 10 million people have been displaced. Over 3 million have fled the country into Poland and other countries. It's just, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think this is a little surreal, admittedly, that I cannot believe that this is happening, that someone that we actually have someone in the world like Putin who is blatantly doing this naked aggression and is willing to kill civilians. Reports of, basically hijacking, I guess, even the convoys that are humanitarian convoys are leaving, trying to leave and get people out safely and things like that. This is just, every day that goes by just really bugs the heck out of me, to say the least.
Yeah, to me, it's like, if I am him, I'm trying to do this as surgically as possible, right? I mean, they want his aim here is to be in charge of Ukraine long term, right? Or to be able to dictate its affairs long term. You're now in there committing atrocities and stuff. Those people are never going to forgive you, right? I mean, it's not like, after a few years, we'll sort of get back to normal and start liking each other. And it's like, no, I mean, you're doing things that you'll be hated for thousands of years, right? Right now, you're doing them. Conservatives, two things about this story that continue to fascinate me is, one is, Russia has already lost more soldiers in this war than it lost in Afghanistan. And you will remember that Afghanistan cost the Soviet Union its rule, right? That was like the final blow. And they were, it pretty much was headed downhill and could not be stopped after Afghanistan. And they've already lost more people. There are people all over Russia know about this. You cannot put the cone of silence over a whole country anymore like they could before. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the video, the Twitter and whatnot of Russians celebrating this and being all for it. But there are a ton of them who are not, especially the people whose kids are wrapped up in trying to fight this war because they're not well led. The Russians have never really been good at attacking others. They're more good at defending. You attack them, they get you in that web and bog you down and so forth. But taking the war to other people has never really been their specialty. And it's not here, right? That there's a big column outside of Kiev that has not moved in weeks. They appear to be, they were driven out of the suburbs of Kiev. They've not really reported a big victory in about 3 weeks now. There's nothing they've really taken in that period. So, they're now in a stalemate situation. Bob's right. Putin has always targeted civilians. And he thinks that, and he says, oh, well, the Ukrainians are putting their assets in civilian areas, right? Their military assets in civilian areas and asking for it, so to speak. But his whole thing has been this strange exercise in blame shifting. I mean, and a lot of people in this country are falling for it. I had someone tell me, oh, well, he's let the church be reinstated there. And he's for traditional values. And, I'm like, he's trying to conquer the neighboring country because he imagines himself to need this buffer between him and the West. Like the West is trying to attack him. Like anybody is interested in getting him out of his problems by taking him over, right? So now, you have a country, this war is not popular in Russia. It does not seem to be popular in Russia. There you see, and you can kind of tell that because there seems to be this sort of PR campaign there to make it look like the Russians are behind it, right? So you would not be doing that unless you're trying to erase an untruth. So I don't know. I don't know where he goes from here. I think they're looking for a way out of it. I think Zelensky is trying to figure out, what he can say vis-a-vis future commitment to NATO or whatever that would make this go away and bail him out. But I don't know that, just waiting and letting, domestic pressure cave in on Putin may be the best approach at this point.
So, at what point does this become a quagmire, or are we already there?
I think that we're pretty close to quagmire now. There's not really any movement. The Ukrainians, I don't think, can kick them out, right? They would need help to kick them out, to expel them. But I don't think that the Russians can move much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's just that, and you mentioned Afghanistan, I mean, which was obviously an utter disaster for Russia. And, that's definitely got to be in the back of the mind of a lot of people. But this has not gone well for the Russians at all. And it only, I think every day they're in there, it only gets worse. But then again, he can't just go ahead and turn tail and run at this stage either.
Right.
So we get these things. What about your thoughts about, we're seeing a lot of chatter in the news about cyber war.
Right. I think you're going to start to see what they have in the way of those kind of weapons, because what they're going for now is not the annihilation of Ukraine. He can't really afford to do that at this point, right? He thought it would be a lot easier, and now to completely subdue the country probably would take more time and money than the Russians have. So you will start seeing things that don't cost as much to do, such as cyber attacks. The Ukrainians are not all that dependent on the Russians to keep their cyber stuff open, between the relations between casualties. It's a way to you're trying to get the Ukrainians to sue for peace without having to conquer them militarily by caging them electronically. But I think Elon Musk and others are making that where it won't be all that effective.
Yeah, and I was just reading something about. I mean, our banking system could be vulnerable to something like that if necessary, because a lot of the banks, financial institutions, use a lot of artificial intelligence to get you through things. They're not a lot of real people involved, and so it's computer driven in a lot of ways. So it would be potentially vulnerable to an attack like that. But we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we've known or suspected Russians, have been behind a lot of cyber attacks in terms of spreading viruses into systems and things like that, and a lot of controversy over I think with Kaspersky, the antivirus company, as to whether or not they were really actually antivirus or were they just more of a cover for the virus, and stuff like that. I mean, and you can throw a lot of those things out there, but I mean, there's definitely a lot of kind of hacking and cyber activity, computer activity that goes on in that region, whether or not it's Russia, Ukraine, whatever. But it's kind of that whole area has been famous, become very big on those types of issues, those type of things over the years. So
it's interesting that part of the world, I mean, the reputation of warfare in that part of the world is that it is brutal and personal, right? They do kill civilians, they do attack.
I think this was the complete statement. I didn't quite know where he was going with it before. Now I think I know.
Yeah, and that's right. It's the same type of situation. That's the other thing is the right is making some huge mistakes here, and part of it is because of the media is so distrusted. It's like the media tells you, Russia attacked Ukraine. You're like, okay, I'm on Russia's side. There's so little, chance that the media is telling us the straight story here that I'm not getting on the wagon, right? But the wagon is Ukraine. I mean, people try to complicate this, and there's the Azov Brigade, which is, I guess, Nazis or whatever. There's within the Ukraine military, and there's Zelensky's had this and that dealing, and he has a big house here and there and all this stuff, and he must be doing this and that and the other. Okay, Zelensky is probably the least corrupt ruler of Ukraine since the Iron Curtain came down, right? I think that's one of those things. You got to be a certain amount tough to be involved in Ukrainian politics, especially at that level, And two, he did not attack Russia. Russia attacked him. People are trying to overcomplicate this. This is actually a very simple thing. Russia attacked Ukraine because of its buffer sphere of influence, way of thinking that they've had since the Russian Revolution. It's consistent with everything they've done going back to the time of Lenin. It's right. It's not apart from that. It's exactly still that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't provoking them. He wasn't, he's not out there saying, "Come get us." We're come and get it, kind of thing like that. That's not what he wanted.
No, he was minding his own business. And there's something called the Donbass region, the eastern part, which is the part nearest to Russia. Those people are fighting the Russians harder than anybody else, right? So the idea that if Zelensky would just give in, they could be part of Russia like they want to, is nonsense, right? I mean, you think about, you go to Los Angeles or Houston or somewhere where there's a lot of people who have moved here from Mexico, and you say, hey, we're at war with Mexico. What are you going to do? Not a whole lot of those people are going to run back and jump on the side of Mexico. That's why they left, right? So, and it's a little bit different because you're not talking about evil communists who have, ruined the world for 40 years with imperialism and so forth. But, the fact is, these people are in Ukraine for a reason, right? If they may be Russian nationals, they may speak Russian, as people point out to me. But if they're so in love with Russia, it's right nearby. Why don't you just move across the border and live there? Okay. Now, there's different reasons for that. People get set up and they're running a business and all that stuff. And there's no doubt that there's some people in that region who wish they were in Russia. But the idea that justifies this is nonsense. No basis, in fact.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting too how, Netflix is now streaming Zelensky's old comedy show, which was basically a comedian who becomes the president,
right,
of Ukraine.
Right. Now he also had a show at one point where he played the piano with his penis. Did you know about this?
Oh, okay, great. Thanks.
We crossed a new bridge here on the
Oh my gosh.
I mean, you know,
Wait a minute. Are your kids going to watch that part?
yeah, we talked about it. I mean, you know.
Oh my gosh. All right. You're a new kind of parent. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I just don't get it with Putin. I mean, this whole thing has just been so nutty with what he's done. But, and then they set down this kind of ultimatum, right? They said, you need to get out of this town, otherwise, or else, something like that. And Ukraine's like, no,
Right. Well, that's usually how they do it. They, like when we got ready to bomb Iraq, we sent Saddam a message and said, we'll give you 48 hours to capitulate and leave the country, take your sons with you. And of course, they're like, yeah, right, buddy. You just wait the 48 hours and hit the button, because they're not going to do it. But part of what's happened here, though, is Zelensky has been uncorrupt enough, for lack of a better term, to where he's really done a lot to make the military stronger, right? So Putin sees this and he's like, if I'm going to beat them, I got to go now. I can't wait, because if I wait, they'll be strong enough to hold me off. And he may have already waited too long. He may have miscalculated already.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely possible. That's Bob, you got to say here.
Right. That's right.
Right. You were just right.
Yeah.
So
very small nuggets of truth. And Americans sit over here and lap up this, Putin's talking points and just repeat them without thinking, and it's unbelievable. It's just, the conservatives.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing too. I mean, I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that, because it just has been a little bit perplexing to me as to why fellow conservatives have not sided with Ukraine on this. I think we've talked about this before. I mean, it's pretty clear this is good and evil at this point. I mean, I can't see a starker contrast between good and evil than what is happening here. And for conservatives to line up on Putin's side, because of distrust of the media, that you've got to get over that. I mean, yeah, I understand it to a certain degree, that the media's reputation, their credibility is so bad that would be kind of the knee-jerk reaction is whatever they say, we got to go the opposite way. But this is a very real thing that's going on here. And
and whatever Biden's for, we're against it. I mean, if you want to make a political argument against Biden, to me, the one that's unassailable is this would not have happened under Trump, right? I mean, even what is the guy that Noah, the talk show host,
Trevor
Noah, right? Even said, because look, this wouldn't happen under Trump, and that's a fact, and you cannot get around it, right? And that's true. I mean, and one of the things is like, do you think these problems all have welled up to an unacceptable level for Putin in the last year and a half? No. I mean, is this whatever he's fighting this about has been going on for a lot longer than Biden has been president, right? I mean, he didn't just start this. This has been going on for a long time. And then, he took a long time to build up, right? I mean, we've Biden pretty soon after taking office started talking about, hey, Putin is building up around Ukraine and intends to attack it. He said this a long time ago, months and months ago, right? So, they knew it was coming. They had a lot of time to work on it, and they didn't get it done, right? They didn't come up with anything that stop it from happening. They found out that, Putin's done a pretty good job of using his leverage, and I think it's got to be separated out, because a lot of conservatives say Putin is smart. And he is smart, right? He's gotten to the top of a very tough country after getting to the top of a very tough organization within the government of that country, the KGB, right? So, these guys you have to be very talented, both as a politician, a thinker, and an infighter to do that, to pull that off, right? So, Trump goes, yeah, he's a smart guy. Oh, Trump loves Putin. He's backing Putin. Like, no, he's saying he's a smart guy. We don't really say that about Biden just because we've looked at the results. So we're in sort of a mismatch here, right? They have a strong secure, ruler, sure of his place in the world and in his country. We have a guy who's hesitant and 78 and not sure where he is all the time.
Yeah,
It's really hurting us now.
right. I mean, and people can criticize Trump and the way that he conducted foreign policy in terms of some of the relationships, but I kind of like some of the things that he did. I mean, he just tried to reorder things and just say, it's America first, baby. And this is how we're the superpower. You got to fall in line with us. With Biden, it's going back to the kind of the old ways, and it's like this whole thing opened up. The foreign policy crises that we've had since Biden took office, I don't think this would have happened under Trump. And and now then you have what about Russia? Part of the thing they're going to is that there's a threat of nukes. I mean, they've already used hypersonic missiles, but there's a threat of nukes too. Once again, stuff that wouldn't have happened under Trump.
Right. I don't think you'll see nukes. I don't think it. I think Putin will quit this war before he uses a nuke to win it, even a tactical nuke.
Yeah, I think so too. And I didn't even know what a hypersonic missile was until I had to go and actually look at it. It's like those things are. Those are very hard to defend against.
Yeah, that's right.
For what they do. So it's a very interesting weapon. But yeah, when you see day after day and read, either we see on television or read in the news, the plight of the Ukrainian people and what they're going through in trying to survive, the ones that have stayed behind, it's really heartbreaking for this, and to have anybody standing up on the side of Putin. Yeah, and this is politics aside in terms of Biden. The president. The president. He's right on the situation. He's calling Putin out, and the conservatives that are supporting, that are thinking that, oh well, it's because of the media, all the stuff that you kind of mentioned before. They've got to get up. They've got to get on the right train here on this and align themselves. This doesn't help them at all. There are people that if you think some Republicans are out of touch at this point, these people are just kind of out of touch. They're not dealing with the real reality of the situation there. And it's
going to hurt because you're taping a lot of stuff, putting a lot of stuff on tape that can be used in campaign ads.
Right. This is an election
guy hollering for Putin, cheering for Russia in the big attack. Right.
Right. The Republicans have all the momentum and have all the advantages, and these Republicans are hurting themselves. They're hurting the party by doing this.
Yeah, and it hugely could cost us the midterms.
Right. And it's. I'm still confident that the Republicans come off with a victory in the midterms, but things like this do not help the situation at all. I think this is another one here from Bob. Bob's very active today.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's so much there, and I think this is a discussion that will continue on because as long as Putin stays there, it's opened up this whole thing, and and we're seeing. I think we're to an extent. We're seeing NATO kind of solidify. I think a lot of these other countries are seeing there's a real threat here. Russia has. They have gone pretty much to the Polish-Ukrainian border and bombed and things like this. So Poland is awakened here, and other countries along those lines are saying, yeah, we've got the Russian bear is ready. Putin is actively engaging here. What the final outcome will be is not known yet, but I think NATO may show there's more money, more resources being poured in here now because I think NATO is becoming more front and center now.
Right, and one of the arguments these conservatives make on behalf of Putin is that he we wouldn't put up with without a buffer country, somebody an alliance with our geopolitical rival. Right on our border. Well, we do have one right on our border called Cuba, right? That is a part of a geopolitical alliance of our rival, right? They cut them off now, but Cuba existed for the entirety of the Soviet Union, right? So, and if you say, okay, we'll give him Ukraine, we'll let this happen, we won't stop it in the name of providing this buffer. What's he bordered on then? Poland, right? Which is a NATO country, right? So then does he need another buffer, right? Because there's Poland, not a country that hasn't committed to NATO, but a full-fledged NATO member is now your neighbor. So, do you get to attack them because, say, you need your border space? How many of these, when are you going to fight? What's the one that will get these guys off the bench, right? And I don't know, like, should we be committing ground troops to this? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, the time to oppose this, and we're opposing it. You cannot argue that we're not. We have sanctions. We're working with allies, all that kind of stuff is right this moment now. And you also, the Russians are not going to be any more vulnerable than they are right now. I mean, they're back there building strength. They're back there realizing, they didn't bring enough firepower to this either. So what are they doing about that? I don't know, but we're about to find out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we have to, same thing. I don't know if we have to commit ground troops there, but I mean, it looks like we're trying to do things with materiel to give them the resources to fight back. And as I said at the beginning, I mean, the Ukrainian, I mean, they have shown amazing resilience. I definitely something that Putin did not calculate, that how forcibly they would resist this. And if you give them the right armaments, the Russians are going to be in trouble. Even outnumbering the Ukrainians as much as they do, Ukrainians seem to be better trained, and just their morale is better. I mean, they're fighting for their country.
They're willing to fight. They're ready to fight.
Yeah,
the Russians are like, what are we doing here?
Right, exactly. It's like, yeah, what exactly? What's the purpose of this? Yeah. It wasn't enough to just annex Crimea. We've got to now do this. Yeah, so it's just an interesting thing. So what about, so the president is off to Brussels, I guess it is. There's G7 EU meetings. There's a NATO meeting coming up. It's a short trip and everything like that. Jen Psaki's not coming because she tested positive for COVID for her second time.
I love how they all keep saying, well, I have mild symptoms thanks to the vax. Like, you have mild symptoms because this thing has mild symptoms, yeah. Right? Your vax is obviously doing you no good, right? If you've had it twice.
Yeah. So it's, I'm not sure what Biden is going to say or do. I haven't really read up much about this. Is there a lot of effect or much of an effect of Biden being over there, except for the fact, I mean, he is the president of the United States. And he, like we said, I mean, he has been he's been very supportive of Ukraine in the fight.
He has.
So I think,
I mean, it's with him, it's almost, if he's willing to travel, it kind of shows you a symbol that he's pretty serious about it. He didn't even travel during his campaign all that much, right? He did it from a basement for the most part, right? So he's not he's not big at this. I'm a little worried about it because it is hard to hide the personal weakness, when he's in front of those people. It is hard to hide that his mental faculties aren't there, and that he's, moves slowly, thinks slowly, not sure of all the facts at hand, and now you're putting him on a stage with all the other world leaders. And like you say, they're worried. They come pre-worried, right? Because this is on their doorstep, threatens their energy supplies a lot more than it does hours. And, so I don't know, I'm really kind of fearful for what's going on. I liked that, Trump went over and he broke some eggs and, the people left miffed and whatnot. I really don't care if they're miffed, right? They had to do they ended up having to do what he said anyway. They had to meet their NATO commitments and so forth. And, I don't know, Biden is not for holding people's feet to the fire. I'm not sure what he's really asking for at this point. And, and I'm even less sure, given what has happened when he's asked people to increase energy production. I'm even less sure that people will do it. We'll go for it.
Yeah. And as Bob was saying here in terms about Germany's economic, military, and political responses, is a good example of what's been going on. I mean, these countries that, that had been abandoning, nuclear power and basically becoming, subservient to Russia for energy needs and things like this, they've been awakened by the naked grab here, and they're responding.
Well, Germany has. I don't know about the rest of them are not. They're not to the start gate on that yet.
Yeah, but I think they're coming around because they realize. I mean, they're looking around trying to find a way to alternative supplies. They realized that this Russian situation is not a good thing to be in. They put all their eggs in that basket, or were moving towards that, and that's coming back to bite them. And so you got to do something. But Germany has been learning a very painful lesson about what happens when you try to abandon nuclear energy and you're trying to kowtow to other things, that you've left yourself really, really open and exposed on this.
I think people are going to we're in for a recalibration around the world about the global warming and green energy and so forth, because I think the threat is just not there, right? They keep predicting this place and that place will be underwater, the ice caps will disappear, and none of that appears to be happening. So I think the urgency is sort of there's the people who are always going to be obsessed by this, but the urgency for most people has sort of worn off of this. And we are, these people are way out over the ledge, committed to renewable energy to the detriment of other energy, and are now finding it inadequate, and your options for resupply, not favorable, right? So I think people are going to go, you're going to see not an abandonment of green energy, initiatives, but a retrenchment to make sure that, like, say, okay, it's green, it's traditional energy plus, right? We have enough energy to supply everything, and we will slide down. We will keep doing that, and we will, slide it down as green energy becomes capable of being a bigger part of the pie. We'll just reduce a little, but we will keep the pie big enough to serve the people, right? Because that's not really happening right now.
So I'm just curious as to your opinion about this. I mean, Olaf Scholz is running Germany right now. Do you think the reaction would have been different had Merkel still been in power?
Absolutely. Merkel, not capable of this kind of solution, this kind of thinking.
Yeah, that's what I think. This is interesting because Merkel, she was, she's supposed to be more aligned with our side of things. Versus someone like Scholz, right? But Scholz is, here's a guy looking at reality and saying, okay, we got to do this. We made a lot of mistakes in the past here, I think, and it's not perfect, but it's better. And they've got to try to find a way that fossil fuels, as much as it's been panned by these left-wing environmentalists, is that it's still needed in this world.
The thing that the people don't realize is, like, the devices, right, have added a third to energy demand in the last 8 years. So energy, and so people are talking about, Saki's talking about the undrilled wells, and we're producing what we were producing before and so forth. Producing what we're producing before does not feed the bulldog, right? It's a third higher now. We need a third more than we did before. It really needs to be all of the above, right? Until you can solidify this, or you can stabilize it in some other way. But right now it's becoming unaffordable. You're going to go back to people, burning wood and, all that kind of stuff, things that are far less environmentally friendly, because, you can't handle natural gas and coal, so forth, even with the super scrubbers and all that stuff. So they're backing themselves into some corners, and there are not a lot of good options to, going with what we know.
Yeah. Exactly. Are they, we have, I don't even know how many server farms all over the world that basically are the kind of really serve as the backbone of internet connectivity all over the world. Exactly what kind of energy are they running off of? What is that? It's
not just the servers. When you have those things, you also have to keep that 10 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So you got to be cooling it, seriously.
Right, exactly.
All the time.
It's very complex. They draw a lot of electricity. They generate a ton of heat. So you've got to have these conditions to keep everything cool so they don't overheat. It's a very complex operation, and so they're planning on powering those by sun and wind in the future. Is that what the idea is? To generate the electricity? Yeah, that's really going to work.
Yeah.
So yeah, the Greta Thunbergs of the world and people like that. I mean, they just don't understand that they see some short term things, and that's all they see, and they just don't have the understanding of what goes on there, which is also what the administration has put themselves into, is that they've listened to those left wing environmentalist extremists, about
The leftists, I mean, the whole thing is they don't worry about the consequences of their actions, right? They raise taxes. Hey, well, the government will have more money. Yeah, but the people won't, right? The economy won't. Vibrance won't. Jobs won't, right? So
well, and if you're Joe Biden, I mean, if you're saying that you want you want things to happen by electric vehicles by 2035 to 2050, okay, so that's 13 plus years out. I mean, what's the likelihood that Joe Biden is even going to be around to even see that?
right.
So which is a typical political thing, particularly by the Democrats, which is they put all these taxes and policies in place for what down the line sounds great for a lot of people and their supporters, especially on the left, but they're not going to even be here to have to deal with the effects of these things. Right.
It's not going to work unless there are massive improvements in battery, energy storage technology, which you don't have right now. Like you're talking about, the car batteries are 900 pounds, and we can't even get all the stuff we need to make them. And the stuff we need to make them is pretty disgusting and has to be ripped from the earth in some pretty disgusting ways too, right? So batteries are not cleaner than burning oil. I mean, let's.
Yeah, I meant to look this up, because when the tech podcast that I mentioned frequently, they have an auto segment with an auto expert, and so he talks a lot about EVs because the podcast host is an EV guy himself. But he's driven all kinds of cars in his career, working for auto magazines and publications and whatnot. But I mean, even this guy was saying about the Hummer EV that is still scheduled to come out. So you've got this massive EV, and we already know what a Hummer is just in the traditional world, but they're developing a Hummer EV. And he was mentioning how the weight of the battery, he just thought it was really kind of dumb, because it's so heavy, but you're going to carry basically a 200-pound person or thereabouts. So the battery is 4 or 5, whatever times higher than the cost of the than the weight of the driver. Even as a guy who thinks that EVs have got a place in this world, it doesn't make sense to him, right? And we things are out of whack. Which was an interesting point, was like, do you realize how heavy that battery is that's in your car for your EV to power this? And part of the
basically all that's holding it down.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is that they talk about technology that how they need to extend the range of the vehicle, right?
Right.
Well, part of that is that you've got to make the battery kind of bigger and heavier to be able to have more capacity to drive longer distances between charges. Right. And so you're carrying.
Did you see the picture? I guess it was out in West Texas the other day. It was a gas station that had a charging thing, and there's like 15 Teslas lined up for the charging. And it's like, if you could only run a little gas,
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. I'm just, if I was gonna get another car to save on gas, I would consider a hybrid, but that's about as far as I'd go, because I still think that just is a nice thing. I've driven a hybrid on a rental and it was fine. Yeah. Good gas mileage and stuff like that. I think that committing all the way to an EV is much harder. And and I've said time and time again, I just don't see how this world converts there. I mean, are we going to have, a bunch of chargers in apartment and condo complexes and et cetera, et cetera? It just doesn't make any sense.
Right. And here's the other thing about it. So when a gas engine runs out of fuel, you go put fuel in and it's ready to go immediately, right? Electric engine requires you to wait for the fuel to come online, right? You hook up to that charger. It's not like pumping gas, pump gas for 2 or 3 minutes, put the thing back in the deal and drive off. This is 30, 40 minutes, right?
Right. And the 30 minutes, as I understand, is when you're on the fast charge, which is which gets you up there quicker, is that basically it will get you in about 30 or 40 minutes. It'll get you to about 80%. and then that's when you basically you might as well just take off there and then go until you can get to another place, because to go anything above 80, that's when everything slows down. It doesn't even matter if you're on the fast charge system, is that the battery at that point in time charges so slowly between 80 to 100% that's the overnight charging you do, in essence.
Yeah.
So you really don't go above 80% battery, charging during the day or when you're traveling around, because otherwise you'd be there forever trying to get it up there. So you get to the 80%, and then you have to drive, and then it drops down. Then you got to go push back up to the 80%. So some people understand that, and they just keep their vehicles around there for short drives. But I just don't see it. But then again, I'm an old guy, but I won't be around to see probably the full evolution of EVs and what the craziness will be with environmental.
Right. Our kids will. They'll have some of this worked out, and EV might not be a bad option for them.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And I'll throw in that other thing about with all this stuff that's been going on, how Tesla's having to raise the price of the car because of the battery prices are going up because of all the issues, the war, everything. All these things are coming into play. Supply chain, this stuff is actually forcing that up. So while you and I are facing high gas prices, people trying to buy, Teslas and stuff like that now are facing increased costs because the battery costs are going up. And I think it was this Lucid Motors, which is also making EVs. They had a bunch of commitments, people that had signed up and they had committed to buying, they put down a deposit or whatever. And then apparently Lucid went back to them and said, well, our costs have risen, so we need to charge you more for the car. And there was an uproar. So they're like, okay, well, you pay the original price we agreed to pay. Yeah. But the car, it's going to cost them. I mean, they're already losing money because they always lose money at the beginning anyway. But now they're going to wind up losing even more money because their costs have risen before they hit the production line.
Out the door. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't get the customers to pay any more money. So it's just I don't know. I mean, I have this thing about people who are buying stock in Lucid, which went public. Like, I don't, it's one thing to buy stock in Tesla, which seems to have proven itself, and it's already been out for a few years. So I'm not sure I'd be buying stock in Tesla myself. But when I look at the other EV companies, I'm thinking like, now I think those are much higher risk in this environment to go into. And
everybody not Tesla is at a lot of risk right now.
All right, as we wind down here, was it her name here? Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings. I want your opinions here.
Well, I think that, the Democrats are right to raise, the Republicans are right to raise concerns about the child porn people and all that stuff. Apparently, her theory is that there's a big difference between people who, have a few images of kids having sex and people who are producing the films, right, or whatever, actually dealing with the kids. And okay, I can accept that, but I'm not wanting to pin a medal on the people who receive it either, because if you can, what's going on in the country, and this is sort of a proxy battle for this, is that they're trying to force acceptance of sex with kids, right? That the whole, all these things are, the first thing Biden did when he became president, one of the first things he did when he became president was broke up the unit of the FBI that Trump had put together to go find these, predators and these, human trafficking and these, they remember during Trump administration, almost every week you would hear they found some home with 17 kids who had been trafficked. They found some deal with 113 kids who had been trafficked, right? They were just turning these things up all over the country. And it was because Trump was committed to that issue. So, and Biden is committed to making, and a lot of Democrats are, to making this acceptable, right? It's like you see it in the opposition to the bill in Florida. All that bill says is don't talk about this in class with kids who are in third grade or below, right? If a kid comes to you, and the response I'm always hearing on this is like, well, if a kid comes to the teacher and says, I think I'm gay, or I think I'm trans, or I think I'm this and that and the other, what do you want the teacher to do? Okay, here's what I want the teacher to do. I want them to tell the parents. And everybody's, oh, it's horrible. The parents might beat them up. every once in a while, you might get a parent who hears that their 8-year-old son is thinking this and beats them up. But 99.999% of the time, there's something going on with the kid that the parent does need to be informed about to try to respond to. And, they need that information. It is not, we put you on a secret track to transitioning to the other gender, and not tell your parents in the 3rd grade. In the 3rd grade, you tell the parents, and you have to trust the parents to be mature enough to handle it, right? I mean, those are the facts, and there's no, you can't tell me that the teacher is better positioned to have these conversations than the parents.
Yeah, the thing that gets me about these hearings is before they began was just, how Durbin and these guys are saying that, well, we want decorum, on these things, as if they had treated any of the recent the conservative nominees with any decorum, right?
Exactly, right.
And so they're like, well, it's our nominee, so now everybody's got to just be very nice.
Yeah, behave yourself. This woman's a professional. So is Brett Kavanaugh. So is Clarence Thomas, right? Yeah. Remember, that was a debacle too. They ran essentially the same play against him that they did against Kavanaugh. Mysterious woman out of the deep, dark past who has these very specific allegations of what he did that she didn't see any reason to bring up until voila, he was on his way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so you have Democrats and you have liberals that are upset with the Republicans, the senators who have been questioning her. It's like, your memory is really short, right? In terms of what has happened in recent history here, in terms of how the Democrats, treated the conservative nominees here in the past few years. Yeah, no, I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, not surprising, but unbelievable at the same time.
Tell that story walking, buddy, because I do not care.
Yeah, but I mean, in essence,
she doesn't belong on the court, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing I'm seeing that's going to stop her from being confirmed, right? I mean, there's no Democrat that's objected to her at this point.
Right. They haven't brought up anything that a Democrat would bite on yet.
So she probably thinks
so. It probably doesn't matter, but that we should do our due diligence and ask our questions.
Right. I mean, yeah, you may not be able to stop it, but you can't just sit back and let it happen. You need to at least put some questions on the record and say, this is what it is. And just make sure that it's out there. Because I mean, I think in her opening testimony, in her remarks, she was talking about being neutral and some other things and stuff like that. And I'm like, right.
Right. It doesn't seem like you've done that so far,
Right. I mean, it may change, but I mean, I'm expecting a far, she's replacing Breyer. Sure. I'm going to expect her to be far more to the left than Breyer,
Right. And man, to be fair, she still only gets one vote. But to be fair, it's also huge that, Clarence Thomas needs to stay healthy.
Right.
He was in the hospital. I guess he's out.
And that whole thing goes back to something I was saying during the Trump years, which is just like if you've got a Republican Senate and you've got a Republican president and the whole 9 yards, and you're Clarence Thomas, and you're getting up there in years, you may want to think about retiring while things are controlled so you can get a conservative nominee in there to replace you, because you do not know what the future holds. Clarence Thomas now, he absolutely has to stay healthy, for a few more years here until we can get the White House. We got to get the Senate back, basically.
Right.
Control of that. Then we can breathe a sigh of relief. But there's no guarantee. I mean, Clarence Thomas could be replaced by a liberal if things go wrong. Right. I mean, and he's not young.
Right. And the other thing that we need to think about is, the next time this does come up, the people who've been running our selection process for us, no mas.
Yeah.
Thanks for your help. We're going to find somebody else.
Yeah.
Because it's not worked out.
Absolutely. All right. Last word, final thoughts, whatever.
Final thoughts. Let's see what I have here that we have not touched on. So I wanted to say something about DeSantis declared the Florida swimmer the winner.
I love it. I love it.
I mean, he's got a good ear for like what's happening out there and a good little response for it. And that's an issue. I mean, that was a debacle, right? The NCAA, they can say what they want. They can be as woke as they want and whatnot. But the fact is, something's got to be done about this. You can't go through this next year and the year after and so forth, because I think next year, I think the other swimmers we're not quite sure how to play this now. Now there's a lot what they know is there's a lot of support out there for not letting guys go in and win, cheat to win girls sporting events, right? Which is what happened here. And so, I think by the time this rolls around next year, the protest of it will be a lot more organized and involved and extensive and significant. And I think the NCAA better be ready, because you could end up with, one swimmer in some of these events.
Yeah. Well, what was that stat I saw? It's that as a male swimmer, he was ranked 432nd, and then then a transgender as Leah, number 1 in that.
Right. Event. And maybe we've talked about this before, but one time Serena Williams was on NPR with Steve Inskeep, and he goes, we keep calling you the best women's tennis player in the world, but we should call you what you really are, which is the best tennis player in the world. And she's like, no, I'm not. She said, I would be about 300th or so among the men. Right. So, and for Thomas to be 462, I'm like, it's not exactly the same, but it's pretty, 300 is a pretty good guess, Yeah. Martin and Navratilova is right. It's asterisk all the way. It's not an athletic competition. I've coached in games where I was coaching girls against boys, and I can tell you that it is not fair. You cannot even pretend that it is.
That's right. All right. Well, with that, we'll end it here. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Thanks for the comments, Bob. You had lots of great comments today. As always, please stay safe, stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anybody.
Yeah, I'm glad Bob to hear from Bob today too, because that tornado was pretty close to his house.
Yeah. He said it was 25 miles away or something like that in the comments. So yeah, he was pretty close. So we're glad that he's safe. And as always, God bless America. We're going to be off next week. This is News to Broncos, but I've got those church things, and that's so we will be back in 2 weeks. It's just too hard for me to schedule everything on one day. So 2 weeks from today, we will be back. See you then.